Hello, and welcome back to the Product-Led Festival. A big thank you to our partners and speakers for helping us feature amazing content over the 3 days, looking at the core building blocks of product-led growth, from discovery and experimentation to metrics and measurement and everything in between. A quick reminder to join our Slack channel to interact with other attendees and join selected speakers for Q&A. You can find the link in the menu at the top of this page. Enjoy the festival.
Hi everyone, my name is Jamie Norman. I'm the head of product for Redeye. Redeye is a marketing automation platform that works with a lot of the UK's largest retailers. And I'm going to talk to you about how we've introduced AI, or specifically machine learning, into our product set. So there's a large issue around trust in that, and I'm going to talk about how we've overcome that and our approach to developing that into our product. An alternative title for the presentation could basically be how the movie industry has made things a lot harder for us to do that. And I'll explain why. I'm going to run a little quiz now. Now, if we were in the same room, which in an ideal world we would be, I would be offering a spot prize for this. But on the screen now, you're going to see 10 or 15 references to movies where AI is a key part of the plot. There's a common theme with this in that instance of AI is usually the bad guy. You know, the unknown, all-powerful AI, the enemy, humans are the hero. So there's no surprise that when we start to talk about AI in the real world, there's an element of maybe there's a few trust issues there, because we're fighting this kind of trope in terms of how it's perceived and how it's kind of leveraged in this kind of malevolent way. So if you want to have a go at trying to guess some or all of these movies, I'll still see if I can offer some kind of prize and get that to you via the product-led team. Just a bit of fun, but something for you to try while you've got some time on your hands. So when that comes to the real world, we've obviously got an uphill battle. And then when you compound that with a number of other things, that makes that even harder. Just before I move on to talk about that, I'll give you one for free. This last one is Blade Runner, and this was set in November of 2019. So as of today, or since then, this is now period drama. It showed that we would have flying cars, digital billboards. I guess 1 out of 2 is not bad. Not the right one. But when that comes to the real world and tech and data and these kind of things, this is all compounded by various data breaches, various high-profile cases of companies doing not quite legitimate things with people's data, and then the whole tranche of legislation that goes alongside that. It's no wonder that there's challenges around that in our industry. So you've then got the things like the word algorithm, and even big companies like Apple sparking controversy with some of the ways that the algorithms work, and this just general mistrust of machines doing things with your data. So working in tech, we've got a lot to do to clean up this reputation. So I'm going to share our journey at Redeye in terms of how we try to introduce this potentially daunting technology to our customers. But first of all, I need to explain something around some context. So how does machine learning and AI and all these things kind of fit, and what do they mean, and that kind of thing? I think it's quite important, and people tend to find it quite useful when we set this kind of context. So in terms of like the difference between artificial learning and machine learning, this would usually be the audience participation piece. I would ask the room this question. So I'm going to answer it for you. I'll do that anyway. Essentially, when you're talking to a developer, you can think of it as machine learning. When you're pitching to a VC, it's AI. Now, that's a little bit of taking a bit of license with that one, but essentially it's suggesting that they are some ways interchangeable. It's probably better explained here. So artificial intelligence, or AI, is a technique which enables machines to mimic human behavior. So that's a kind of a catch-all term. And you cannot go to a trade show at the moment in terms of marketing without people using AI or AI enabled or AI powered, whatever their product is. And that's such a loose term that any kind of machine which is copying something a human would do, any kind of automation, you could probably loosely label that as AI, which is where I think some of the mistrust comes from as well, in terms of people leveraging that as a kind of marketing term. Machine learning is actually a subset of AI techniques which uses statistics to enable machines to improve with experience. So that is getting slightly more focused and slightly more specific about what those computers, those machines are doing. And then you go even deeper, literally, with deep learning, which is a subset of machine learning, which is basically multi-layer networks of computers and making that kind of processing of data and information a lot more powerful. What I'm going to talk about here specifically is probably more in the machine learning area. And the thing that I want to explain here is the notion of accuracy versus explainability. Now, when we're talking machine learning, there are a number of models that we have to choose from. So in terms of sort of simplest to explain, in terms of pure maths on the left here, we've got things like linear regression, decision trees, nearest neighbors. These are things you don't necessarily have to understand for the purpose of this presentation. But in terms of, you may hear these names given to various models, and how I best explain this is how complex they are. So on the left, you can explain in terms of pure maths, and on the right, you kind of explain them in terms of magic. It's a lot harder to explain what they do. So if you put that on an axis where you've got explainability versus accuracy, it probably makes a little bit more sense. So the more accurate a model might be, the harder it is to explain what's going on behind the scenes. So this was as an insight that we used when we introduced it into our products, because we wanted to bring our customers along with us on the journey of introducing this technology into the product. And the harder it was to explain the models we were using, the less trust people had in what we were doing. And there's a kind of an optimal point where the accuracy is more than enough to outperform what a person could do and give them some really good performing modeling in terms of how it helped them with their marketing, but still kept this notion of explainability in how they were able to use the models and understand the data, and if their own customers wanted to understand what the data was being used for, then there was a lot more transparency around that. And this is a particular problem that Google are tackling themselves. So this idea of explainable AI tackles this issue that's known as the black box problem, that this mistrust comes from putting all of your information, all your data, everything you've got into this kind of black box, and then there's this kind of magic happens that spits out a result, and there's no way to understand how that's happened. Even some of the scientists using some of the very accurate, more advanced models struggle to explain how they technically work. So this is very much a thing in terms of where the industry is going, and building these levels of trust. So this helped us in terms of my first piece of advice, which is start from a familiar place. So if you can move people along the journey in terms of understanding machine learning, in terms of understanding AI, we wanted to use a frame of reference that they were used to and familiar with. So I'll explain a little bit about how we did that. So as I mentioned before, Contour, our product, is a marketing automation platform. So essentially what we do is we take a number of digital channels, everything from email to SMS messaging to mobile push messaging, and we have a platform where a marketing team can manage an automated campaign which uses a mixture of those channels, a mixture of rules, to kind of automate some of their marketing communications. Now that isn't where I'm talking about AI. That's where some companies might say that there's AI involved. But as far as we're concerned, that is just pure automation. So that's for some context in what we were trying to do. How those campaigns are powered is using a segmentation tool. So we've got a simple rule builder where our customers can create rules of people in their own database. So everybody who has an age of greater than 35, people that are male, people that live in a particular postcode sector, and then our calculations will go and find out how many of those people meet that criteria in the database and return some results. So what we did when we started was, rather than build this all singing, all dancing, powerful, separate platform that created all kinds of charts and performance metrics around the machine learning models we used, we wanted to use these models to predict the behavior of our customers' customers. So rather than build a completely new tool, we framed that in the reference that they were familiar with. So in the same segmentation tool, we just introduced some rules where the predictive models that we were powering with machine learning were used in exactly the same way as they would get anything else out of their database. So here's an example where we include prospects with a probability which is greater than a particular percentage, people that are likely to make a first purchase in the next 30 days. So all the machine learning was sitting behind that to create a score. And then how the customers would use that would be in a way that was very familiar to them. So the steps they were taking to start using these calculations and this machine learning were very small, because it all came from a familiar frame of reference. So this was our first insight, really, is how you aim for a real world outcome. So how can we take this technology, which is quite very powerful and everyone's getting very excited about, but how can you make it apply in the real world? And that was our first step into doing that. There were people in our business that really wanted to make a big noise about us using machine learning and some of these models, and almost make the tool overly complex so that it would kind of reflect all the kind of smart things we were doing. But that didn't fit with how we built the rest of the products. What we've done before was we've taken very complex things in terms of how people manage their data and the relationships between that, and how we do some kind of smart things in the background to make it make sense to them. And that didn't sit well with creating this kind of advanced, complex way that people would start to introduce predictive modeling and machine learning into their customer experience. So that was the first thing. How can we make that apply to the real world? So what we did is we built 6 models, which all use various types of machine learning. And then we mapped these models to points in the journey of a customer. So essentially what you're doing is going from left to right here, you're following the customer journey. So there's a model which predicts how likely people are to make a purchase in the next 30 days. And they move on to the next stage, which is making a second purchase, and the probability of becoming a VIP, and predicting the lifetime value of the next year. And then at the other end of the scale, how many of those customers are likely to lapse, how many of those customers are likely to unsubscribe in the context of email or various digital channels. So by mapping the models to things that resonated with our customers in terms of their own customer journeys, again, it took that making it real sentiment to the next level. It applied it in terms of a real context. So this is basically phase 2. Phase 1 was, how do we let them use that in a really simple way to introduce them to the idea of scoring people by predicting their behaviors and that kind of thing, and using the models to power that. Then we could start to look into how we could present that in a way where predictive modeling was more of a tool for them to use. And there were some things that we deliberately left out here. Even this was a kind of a big step forward in terms of the complexity, but there's specific things that you would use to measure a model. So things like specificity, accuracy, the classic metrics that are used to measure certain machine models. And we deliberately left those out for the purpose of not giving people too much, but giving them enough that they can do something with, that they can understand it. And then for those customers that do want that greater level of detail and depth and metrics, maybe the customers that had their own data insight teams and things like that, we could start to add these in. But we built it in a way that kind of works at the pace of our own customers. So some of those clients would have seen some of this more detailed information. So how, how accurate is the model? What is the gain of using this model over if we'd have just carried on as we were, and that kind of thing. But you have to bring people along. You have to build that trust into the product. So we gradually introduced these things. It worked in terms of our development cycle. It meant we could iterate. We could basically work on the feedback that we got from our own customers, and we could move at a pace that worked for them and work in terms of almost holding their hands along the way. And then we allowed our customers to kind of manage that. So looking at how they could view the numbers of people based on the accuracy score and things like that. So if you wanted to get more accurate, you're going to get less people, but you're going to be more targeted in terms of the performance of the model. So we started to give people more control. But again, this was just building in layers in terms of those customers that were ready to do it, and getting the feedback on how willing they were to have that control over certain things. And then we tried this in terms of asking customers at a number of marketing trade shows in terms of how do you view the performance of things like machine learning and machine modeling versus a person making the decision? Because people often think they are more qualified to make the decisions because they understand their market, they understand their customers better, and various things. And you can see here, there's clearly a distrust of just leaving everything to the machine. And then there's a fifth of people that are very clear on, I know best and I want to make these decisions. The clear winner is this kind of blended model of a person using the information from these this technology and these models to help them make those decisions. And that's effectively how we introduce that into the product. So we brought them along with us in a way that held their hand, created it in a context that was familiar to them, starting from that familiar place, but still giving them some control. So again, as well as the models not just being wholly black box, the whole product set that we built it into wasn't black box either. We gave them that control in terms of how they use the models and what they use them for, and then that transparency. And that paid dividends in terms of the adoption of the product and how people understood it, and how people were kind of quite proactive in looking at how we would develop that even further. So it's massively changed the game in terms of how we interact with our customers and the conversations we have, and how we can have this kind of dialogue with them in terms of sharing our knowledge and expertise and bringing them along, but then having an input into where that goes. So in summary, in terms of introducing any technology, and that this doesn't just go for AI and machine learning, it's very much a hot topic at the moment. But I would certainly recommend starting on familiar ground. So anything new, see if you have an existing frame of reference that you can use to build on to kind of make these small iterative steps in introducing that. So the next one would be building on trust and iterating on top of that. So it gives you something you can deliver very quickly, which is obviously always at the top of our mind as product owners and product managers. But it gives you something you can build on and get that feedback on. So just classic product management, really. And if you can build to a real frame of reference, so don't leverage that technology for technology's sake. Build that in terms of a way that layers onto what happens in the real world. So it makes it more real for those people using it. And again, more useful. That's always going to pay dividends over just introducing some technology just because it's cool and it's the latest thing and it's just what everyone else is doing. And last of all, going back to the start of the presentation, don't be evil. There's plenty of ways that this can be done in a positive way, a proactive way, and all these things that we've talked about in terms of raising trust and working with those customers. It doesn't have to be framed as the bad guy. And there's a lot of positive ways that AI is being used. Even as I speak now, it's being used in all kinds of ways to support some of the research into coronavirus vaccines, for example, to try and escalate the pace of results and data and all these different people that are working to find a vaccine. So there's all kinds of positive ways it can be introduced, and I think we've all got a part to play in how that story in terms of the positive one is told. So that is a very quick insight into how Red Eye have introduced machine learning and AI into our product. I'm happy to answer any questions via the product-led team or via Twitter at Mr. Jamie Norman, which is also the place you can enter the quiz. So if you want to have a go at that, then watch this space for some prizes. But thanks very much for listening. I look forward to hearing from some of you soon.